rational arguments. Why European Union, and are there any alternatives? Or why it is bad to have economic, cultural, or sport, or any other connections with other parts of the world? I'm sorry if I sound a bit old-fashioned, but at the time when I was growing up, it was normal to be member, or to think of yourself as a citizen of the world, or not to do discrimination between the bad guys and the good guys, especially because Yugoslavia was somewhere in between. We did not suffer the stereotypes of the Cold War, so we did not belong to either side. So I still have problems with taking side of the European Union, or taking it as ultimately good actor on the global scene. We heard this morning that the European Union has problems, deep problems, to fulfill promises to its own citizens, to provide public goods, as Vladimir Grigorov mentioned. So what about the European Union with regard to the rest of the world? What about the exploitation of other parts of the world, of Africa, of Latin America, of Mediterranean countries, if you want? So I'm a little bit cautious when I speak about European Union and all the good things that we are going to gain. But of course, my main problem is democratization. And Vladimir Grigorov had a wonderful presentation some months ago in Vienna. I could follow his presentation on internet, on YouTube, you can find it, where he clearly pointed out what European Union can do and what it cannot do. It practically cannot, it is not good at. In that presentation, I'm very sorry he's not here to correct me if I got him wrong, but in that presentation he mentioned that European Union doesn't bring democratization per se. It is not good at democratizing countries, but it is good in keeping democracies alive, functional, stable, and so on. Also, with regard to the economic growth, European Union membership to European Union doesn't mean automatically economic progress, but it depends on internal economic factors, something that we are obviously lacking to a high degree. So even if we imagine this Big Bang, most optimistic scenario, the question is, are we going to be different than the morning after? Are we going to be really capable to practice all European norms, to join the European market? Are we going to gain anything out of it? So that's why my point, or my primary concern is internal stabilization, change of the country in terms of genuine democracy, getting back to the domestic agenda in terms of our domestic homework, instead of dreaming about joining European Union or blaming others that they are guilty, that we are not there. Sometimes I think that the main issue is only an alibi for all the not finished homework that we have failed to do. The European Union, when I think about the European Union, let me be more, even more radical, as Dusan would say, is empire in denial, as David Chandler put it rightly. It has done a lot of things in the region, but there's no responsibility for any mistake. It puts an emphasis on the stability rather than on social change or democratic change. It argues more for peace without politics, governance without politics, because politics, democracy, is a dangerous thing. You can have all these kind of clashes of different views, visions, and so on. So actually what we have in our countries, in these illiberal democracies, we don't have real political pluralism. We conceive European idea as ideology, and every political party is trying to legitimize itself before the public in terms of being loyal to this general idea, which is another name for well-being, for human rights, democracy, and all nice things. That's a fairy tale. So they have treated all these countries in the way of something called therapeutic governance. So this step-by-step proposition of Gerald announced yesterday, let's do these technical things here, let's fix the administration there, so let's fix the state to be more or less functional. But it doesn't really mean true democracy, lively political debate, or even debate of social changes on a different way. Talking about the future of the Balkans and of the European Union, I would also, and this is my last point, like to turn our attention to something that has been going on in Europe, which is not the mainstream. I'm talking about Syriza, about all these small leftist groups that are trying to promote a different European Union, different European idea. Mainstream media, political parties, actors are dominating the agenda. So we are somehow unaware of what is happening below, on the lower levels of all European societies. So I would rather follow these dynamics, these dialectics of change, both in the Balkans and in the European Union. Hopefully one day we will be together as Europeans, as responsible citizens of this continent, but not necessarily within the capitalist or liberalist framework. So I am for European Union of maybe different colors and visions. Thank you.
Professor Bankovska. You actually gave very interesting points for making a fifth scenario. Maybe we can raise this point in the group about exploring the closer union of the Balkan states as a possible scenario to the future of the Balkans. But what came really clear is that actually the Balkan is no longer a very attractive maiden for the EU as a suitor. It has to reform itself in order to do that. And this reflects very good on what actually Professor Jovic also said, that EU is not very much of an interested suitor for the Balkans anymore. I will here invite Leon Malazogu to explore maybe the other actors in the Balkans and how they impact the future of the Balkans in Europe.
Thank you, Maria. It's always nice to be your guests of CRPM, and especially on the 10th anniversary of your marvelous work. So let me try to go through some of the comments so far and then go a little bit deeper on what you asked me to, and then some others. But first I want to divulge, I was one of the, I spent more research on the Turkification scenario, and although sometimes it is misunderstood because it's understood as sort of more influence in the Balkans, which is more Turkey in the Balkans, which certainly happening, but that was not the concern. The concern is that more that our path to Europe starts to look more like that of Turkey, and that's certainly something that is also happening. But this is also, we've been discussing this with Mr. Jovic on several occasions, but the first after we know the composition of the new European Parliament, and it's certainly it's no longer what's going to happen, but we know at least for the next period what influence we will have, although in my opinion it will depend more on what what will be the outcome of the national elections in several other countries that saw the different composition of their MEPs. But the biggest difference I have, and actually we agree on much more than we disagree with Mr. Jovic, but there's one let's say, essential change I would say is that I don't think that Europe really owes anything to the Western Balkans. It's up to us, and except perhaps on resolving some of the bilateral issues, let's say Bosnia and Kosovo, and the name issue between Macedonia and Greece. But on the rest, it's our homework. There's absolutely nothing that Europe owes to us. The second thing is, first, just to lay the ground, is that we're the least developed and the least reformed part of the slowest growing continent in the world. So in a way, we have to really wake up and smell the coffee. That it's and in a way we're low. We work least hours and we're least effective, and with some very low labor efficiency. And I think we face many of the problems that the EU faces in a way to regain global competitiveness. So I see less problems in politics than in our economics, but that's not my area. The other thing is that partly we're going backwards, and this is maybe just a quick remark and my thoughts on Professor Vankovska, and then I will go with my talk, is we're going backwards because we're for the first time being treated as adults. The Balkans have been treated as babies in an incubator, and suddenly we're out of the incubator and discovering there are diseases out there. And these are the kind of issues that mature states need to plan. We're not used to it. We're used to being babysat in a way by Brussels and by the major powers, and we're not used to act as independent actors in many ways. One of the ways, and is one of the, let's say, symptoms of our problems is that we don't even consider that we have any problems. Let's say very often when we talk about European integration and the difficulties, we tend immediately to blame it all on the voters in Austria and Germany, the fact that they don't like us. And we have actually, there's absolutely no problem with us. It's just their problem, and the fact that they're not open-minded enough, they don't like us. Well, what they've seen so far coming from the Balkans is something they don't like. And in fact, I don't see any problems with the voters in Germany and Austria with the fact that they don't like more of what they already see coming from this area. And what I see coming from this area, I don't like myself. And this is the problem coming back to Mr. Jovic. He says we cannot be another Finland. Well, I thought that's exactly what we want to join the European Union, so we get closer to Finland. If we just move the boundaries and we decide we cannot become another Finland, then we have failed. Well, maybe not Finland, but let's hope we can become another Slovakia or another Estonia, although with a caveat there that they have miserably failed in human rights. Well, not miserably, but they have failed but at least they have performed economically. And so this brings me to my main point. My first point is, do we want Europe for the right reasons? Go anywhere, go into Serbia, for example, and they will tell you what they want Europe for. They want Europe for good social benefits. Well, the social benefits that Europe used to have are gone. The future of Europe, this is the first thing that Europe will have to really give up. It cannot compete in the global market with the level of social benefits it has. So if this is the Europe we want, then voters in Austria and Germany have another reason not to like us, because they will see us adding to the burden, piggybacking on their already difficult path to regain and start to compete with Brazil and China's of this world. So they have another reason to say, these will just add to the very problem we're trying to resolve. So do we really want to become another parasite and living off European taxpayers' money? So, not only economically, we also want societally, we don't want to change. As Mr. Jovic said, yeah, we pretend we change and they pretend they don't see it, and then we move on. But this is, in a way, has contributed to this two-tier Europe in the bottom, and we want to enter that bottom tier. But frankly, if we enter that bottom tier, what have we done? Have we really become better than what we are now? I mean, do we just want to fool ourselves and become an European member at the time? And for me, that will not be the object of desire that we currently have. So Europe has much more serious crop problems than very often we see. I mean, I think only now we're waking up to the fact that it was not a shock, that the European crisis was not a sudden shock, it was not a transitory crisis, it is a chronic disease. And waking up and overcoming this disease will be much more difficult than they realize. And the first question for me to watch, if you really want to join this EU or not, is the current generation willing to give up lots of its benefits for the sake of the future benefits? Will it want to regain labor efficiency and compete with China? Or will the current generation basically decide that we're not going to give up any of the benefits we have, and then we definitely know we're going for the continent we want to join is really the slowest one, and not only the slower, getting slowly, growing slowly, but it will also be, and for good, it will relegate itself to losing the role it has today. And I also think that we can, again, what has the Balkans done to try to join the EU? Some countries have tried to threaten the EU. Oh, if you don't do this, we go to Russia. Or if you don't do this, we shoot ourselves in the foot. Or if you don't do this, we do lots of other stupid things. Some other countries have tried to beg their way into the EU. Please get us. So yeah, we have really no choice. This is what we do. Doesn't work. Oh, we have really no other choice, but allow us in because we'll be good boys. It doesn't work. The only thing that works, and especially in Europe with growing crisis, is if we try to become interesting to the EU. And this is the difficult part that I don't really have an answer to. But this is the only thing that in the long run will work if we try to see, I mean, I don't know, you mentioned cliche, but basically what can we give to you back to you? Because Europe is no longer really the generous club that can just hand out as much as we want. Okay, let me skip to now. So what we currently offer? What we currently offer to the EU, and let's see if we lower conditionality, what will we bring into the EU? We will bring more of Russian type of territorial ambitions. There's still countries in the Balkans that have not resolved each other's disputes, that see each other as main threats to their own national security. So we pretend we're talking about this new regional club that Professor Vankovska mentioned, but this is exactly what we fled from. We used to have a regional club, and it ended up in a war. We fought each other. So we're asking, in a way, European Union, so we kind of, now, I agree that we should be rediscovering regional alliances and clubs and friendships, but the club comes after we have established excellent relations. Still, let's say, my country still doesn't get invited to many of the events that are organized in Ohrid or in Podgorica. To some of them it does, to some of them it doesn't. So first, Europe, before we talk about a regional club, we have to resolve 3 remaining problems in the Balkans, which is Bosnia, the name issue in Macedonia here, and Kosovo, statehood and recognition by Serbia. Then we can talk. But what are we currently now, back from that, but what are we really giving it to the Europe? First, still more territorial ambitions and nationalism, as much, whether we like them or not. Authoritarian models of governance which are growing, and partly are growing because of the bilateral disputes, but they're growing. We see Macedonia going backwards in terms of its democratization, Montenegro, iffy, Serbia in many ways. Let's see tomorrow what happens in Kosovo, because if our Prime Minister wins the elections in Kosovo again tomorrow, then we'll be headed for the 3rd mandate, definitely also growing I don't want to say less, because it's very liberal in that aspect, but still, for one government in the Balkans for 3 mandates, it's more than anybody really wants. And Greek model of running our public institutions. So we're indebted, undemocratic, and nationalistic still. And it's really not Europe's fault. I really fail to see where is Europe's fault in this, for the fact that we cannot just get our act together. And somehow we're hoping that we become problematic and strategic the way Romania and Bulgaria were, so that we just get in because of strategic importance. And then this is where, okay, let me try to go faster because I don't want to go too long, but look what Lady Ashton said when she came to Serbia on the eve of Vucic's victory. She congratulated on the victory at the highest praise that anybody could think of, actually too high for most Democrats to swallow. And the worst, she says, we're not going to ask Serbia to position on Ukraine. There are two scenarios for me. Either she was afraid of the answer of whether Serbia picks Ukraine, picks Russia over Europe. Or second is that they're not in a rush. And I think it was the second. So if Serbia is in a rush to join the EU, fine. If not, we can just wait. If they don't want to declare, which basically to me it means that the message is that the Balkans is not strategic. It's not no longer in the strategically important the way Romania and Bulgaria were. The threat that we will have more of Russia and more of Turkey and more of China in this part of the world is a bluff. It's not going to work. We know much more than that. They understand the Balkans much better. We are wedded to Europe whether we like it or not. And the fact that we have some guilty conscience, we have many anti-European forces that are not strong enough. So we basically have to do the homework and go slowly and become part of the answer. So, and I want to end is I disagree on one thing. I disagree on the lowering conditionality. If it was not, it is the only thing that is working in the Balkans today is conditionality. Serbia hope and is still hoping it can go closer towards the EU without really addressing the Kosovo problem. Should it be allowed to? I'm sure many of my friends in Serbia agree, because we cannot always postpone some of these conflicts. Was it not for bilateral conditionality by Germany and England, Serbia would have gotten faster. So what are we getting ready for? Are we going to have another Cyprus and another Turkey? The fact that Turkey today is less democratic partly has to do with Cyprus. It has to do with the EU. The doors were closed because one member was allowed without addressing the conflict. The ARC party was had the image of a reformist party just about 10, 15 years ago. And look at the image it has now. And it partly has, and this I think has to do with its making of the EU. So do we want to create more Turkeys and more, let's say tomorrow, Serbia goes in without addressing the problem of Kosovo, then you have really Turkey in Kosovo, then you have an angry Kosovo, or for that matter, you already have an angry Macedonia and a more authoritarian Macedonia because of the name issue with Greece. So we need to address these problems as fast as we can. The last thing is Europe really in the interest of our elites? Look at what happened to the former Prime Minister of Croatia. Do you really think our Prime Ministers want that fate? Are they really the ones to really push for the very reforms that will cost their heads? And it's not just the individuals. It's the whole economic structures and the alignment of political and economic elites that they will be against the very kind of reforms that will really prevent the oligarchs, the political oligarchs in the Balkans that have enriched themselves at the cost of the taxpayers' money. And again, I would go back to what we do, and typically people like me and Maria and all of you will go to the European, to the ambassadors present in our capitals and will complain how they're helping. And we're doing very little really to try to face some of these elites ourselves and try to change the countries that we're really hoping the foreigners will do our homework. Thank you.
I would disagree that we go to the ambassadors. Actually, we didn't even invite them for the forum, and they came in great numbers. But thank you very much, and it's very important what you're saying, that Europe is not owing anything to us, but still we are looking at Europe as a token of that we can take and benefit from, and it was very important that you have posed this question: do we want Europe for the right reasons? You mentioned that the Balkans are actually interested in the money and in the prosperity and the development that the EU is offering, EU accession is offering. But in the same time, we heard from Professor Bankovska that actually the Balkan people are looking at Europe as a kind of a security guarantee.
Europe promised
to the Balkans, but actually that is what they are expecting also. And this is due to the diversity of the region, of every country that is in the region. And we have at the end of this panel Professor Spiros Sofos, who is a political sociologist and expert in conflict studies. So he knows very much about diversity and potential conflicts. So he can explore further whether we can look at the EU and believe in their role as a security guarantee for the Balkans.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for coming, and thank you for inviting me. It's an opportunity that I'm very excited about, and I hope I'll do justice to your presentation of me. Anyway, an expert in conflict. Anyway, I would like to start with my immediate reflection when I received the invitation to this panel. I received this email, and I was asked if I wanted to be part of the panel that was going to be discussing the future of the Balkans. I looked at the title, I paused for a minute, and then I remember a book by, I was really young, it doesn't, at the time, by Christopher Zvich, which was called Remaking the Balkans. I mean, he had turned the Chatham House paper into a brave and I think probably foolish attempt to predict how the Balkans would look in the future. I think that it was both interestingly wrong and right in many ways, but it was also a lesson to people that trying to talk about the future of the Balkans to be extremely careful, because this is a very volatile region, and as we can see from the variety of opinions here, it's very difficult to decipher in many ways. Yes, I won't do a speech anyway, but I would like to start with a kind of an anecdote that relates to my recollection of a day in June in 1979 when I was a high school student in Athens, and I remember that this was a very feverish day in terms of the atmosphere. You could feel that something was happening, and what was happening? Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, the president of France, was coming to Athens to sign in a central Athens location Greece's accession treaty to the European Union. And why am I saying that? I hope that the logic of this will appear at the end. I remember that there were preparations throughout. I think 6 months before, a new avenue was built essentially that led from the airport to the center of Athens. With bypasses and everything that a modern European capital would boast usually, and a new building, a building was renovated in neoclassical style, just as some buildings in this city, and all of this was because Valéry Giscard d'Estaing would arrive at this building and would sign the treaty. The president, I think at the time he was prime minister, Konstantin Karamanlis, had invested a lot in this because that was, I think, his the kind of heritage he wanted to leave. But there was a glitch, which I think reminds me what Dane was saying earlier, that many countries pretend they're ready for accession. The European Union pretends that they're ready for accession. Accession happens. And then there's another story. So what was not ready? Of course, a lot of the things that I think he alluded to, but also the central avenue, the forcing group that led from the airport to the center was ready, sort of. A few potholes and bad construction, of course, but it was ready. But the plants that were supposed to be planted in the middle to make it look not like a desert road, but a modern capital road, were not planted. So what did the Prime Minister do? He ordered the particular kind of company that was going to prepare the road to employ anybody they could find to start planting the plants. So that was the readiness of Greece, even at this simple level. It was not ready to join in many ways. And I think that this is symptomatic not only of Greece at the time. I think Greece is still not ready to join the European Union, despite the strange. But on the other hand, Greece was admitted. Now, why was it admitted? That's my question now. Let's first see what people in Greece thought that admission would bring. And I know I'm talking about Greece, and I hope you'll indulge with me, let me indulge with this, on this, because I think it's quite relevant. It's a kind of allegory, I would say. So what were we, Greeks at the time, expecting? We were